All right, guys, we are back with one of the best people that I follow for Mets baseball. His name is Pat Ragazzo. He was just down in Mets camp recently. Pat, how you doing? You look a little bit tanner than I am. How you doing?
Well, a week down in Florida at Met spring training will do that to you, I guess. I somehow evaded the sun and the burn. Well, I definitely didn't evade the sun, but I evaded the sunburn, which is a rarity for me, given my track record. But very lucky to have spent some time down there with the Mets. Soaked in some good vibes and soaked in some sun, and it was a lot of fun. And I really appreciate you having me on. I'm excited to talk about the Mets and do a preview for the second straight year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, again, every year when we talk Mets baseball, we're bringing Pat on. He is the guy. Let's start at the top because I'm really not that. I don't know too much about the Mets. Obviously, I did a little bit of homework. Let's start at the top. Kota Senga goes down. 2 weeks ago, and Mets fans are a little bit worried right now. I would assume. What's his rehab looking like?
Initially at camp, when it first came out that Kodai Senga had the posterior capsule strain behind his shoulder, the Mets did not know what the timeline would be as of that date. So that was a little concerning, especially with shoulders with a pitcher. I mean, shoulders are just as concerning, if not more, than an elbow. And Kodai Senga, he's dealing with a strain. And now the Mets have a little bit more of an idea of how long his timeline might be. It's just so hard because the situation is so fluid. Now, he's going to be shut down for 3 weeks, and they hope with rest and treatment that he's going to be able to pick up a baseball again, start throwing, and then hopefully, if all goes well, be able to start ramping up. So it's going to be at least maybe a 2-month sideline for Kodai Senga if all goes perfect. But in these situations, there's always hiccups, there's setbacks. You just don't know. So the Mets are playing it step by step, which is how we saw them play it back with Jacob deGrom in 2022 when he had his own shoulder injury. So these things kind of can take a while, but you just need to be patient. And David Stearns is confident that Kodai Senga is still going to be able to make a significant amount of starts for the Mets. They just won't have him in the beginning of the regular season. How long that will be, the Mets do not know yet, but they're hoping it's only a month or two maximum, and then they have him for the rest of the season, and that he's the ace that they were expecting him to be. That would be best case scenario, I believe, for the Mets and Kodai Senga.
Got it. So, I mean, right now the starting rotation looks like, I don't know, lack of a better term, a little weak right now. Is there a reason they were not going after Snell or Montgomery? Is it, the money right now? Are the Mets doing a full reset?
This year, and it's been made clear to us several times since the trade deadline when the Mets became sellers and decided to eat a portion of money in order to bring back certain top prospects and build the farm system up. 2024 was always a transition year for the Mets. It was signaled through the trade deadline last summer. It was signaled through the moves they made or lack thereof this past winter. But really, it comes down to a money thing. And the Mets, if they were to sign a Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, they would have to pay double the amount due to the 110% tax. And they're in the same boat as the Yankees. It's the same reason the Yankees haven't signed Blake Snell, who's still out there. It's just too complicated. Even if the Mets or Yankees were to sign Blake Snell for a 1-year, $30 million deal, they'd be paying $63 million. So that's really what it comes down to. And David Stearns is realistic. This is a transition year for the Mets, and they've said it outright several times, as I just alluded to. So there's no point in going out there and overspending on an ace pitcher for 1 year in a year where you're not expected to compete. Maybe you surprise people and make a wild card run. That's what the Mets are hoping for. But you don't make an all-in move. It makes more sense for the Yankees to sign Snell, make an all-in move. You might lose Soto after this year. They really don't know. So the window could close fast. And they made the all-in move by acquiring Soto back in December, and they didn't really do much to improve their pitching staff, particularly their bullpen. But they added Marcus Stroman, and they kind of seem like they're another piece or two away. So the Blake Snell signing would make more sense for the Yankees, even though it would be costly with that tax. But for the Mets, it just really makes no sense to bring a guy in other than to make your roster look better on paper now that you lost Kodai Senga.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I didn't know that they were close to the luxury yet. I mean, I don't think it makes sense for the Yankees to pay $63 million for Blake Snell. If there are other guys out there, Blake Snell, I think that people are kind of just right on Blake Snell. Like, yeah, he won the Cy Young. His ERA was low last year, but the innings, he doesn't really eat innings, so it doesn't really make too much sense for either team. I don't know if it makes sense for any team to be signing that guy $30 million AAV.
Right. In a short-term deal, it makes sense because he's coming off another Cy Young campaign, but he does walk a lot of guys. He has a lot of innings on his arm. He's no spring chicken at this point. He would help the Yankees, who obviously have Garrett Cole coming off an AL Cy Young winning season of his own, Carlos Rodon, who seems like he's primed to bounce back. You have Marcus Stroman, who, when healthy, he's an all-star caliber pitcher and very consistent, although he does not go deep into games, but not many pitchers do at this point in how the game's gone. So it would make their rotation probably the best in baseball on paper and give their World Series chances a big boost. But they still have question marks in the bullpen. I mean, they lost Michael King, they lost Wandy Peralta. They didn't do anything to improve that bullpen really this offseason. I believe they should have gone after Josh Hader more aggressively, and they let him go to the Astros. I think that would have been the perfect move, and then to shift Clay Holmes to the bullpen. But it didn't happen. So now they kind of need to make up for it, and that's why Blake Snell signing would make sense. But we're talking about, again, $63 million for 1 year that the Yankees would have to pay out, not 2 years.
Yeah, it's not worth it. And I don't necessarily. The Yankees have developed guys in the bullpen. I'm not worried about the bullpen. Caleb Ferguson, they brought over. Johnny Lasagna will hopefully be healthy this year. And King, they have guys. I mean, they have guys up and down that are going to be fighting for the 8 spots right now. That's the bullpen is nothing. They always figure out a way. Their pitching coach is unbelievable, and I think they always figure out a way. Now this rotation, I'm obviously very, very worried about. I don't believe in Marcus Stroman. He's just like a little bit. He was a little bit like so against Yankee fans, and now he's on the Yankee fans and wearing the 1996 hoodie and doing all the right things. It's like, let's just take it easy, and we'll see what this guy does in the string. Back to the Mets. Let's start with positive news. I mean, it is Pete Alonso's free agency year. He's going into free agency next year, so this is his big payday year. Thoughts on Pete Alonso? I mean, shout out to him for basically saying he's going to donate $1,000 to every home run he hits. Did you hear anything from the clubhouse? Are they making bets over there on how many home runs he's going to hit this year?
I don't know if they're at the point where they're making bets, but Pete Alonso's a guy who's hit 53 home runs in a season. He's hit 45 a number of times in his career, including last season. I believe he smacked 46, if not 45. But he's going to be paying a lot to the Animal Foundation after this year. And all he really needs to do is go out there and do what he's done for his whole career, and that's be a star power hitter and a franchise cornerstone. That's really what he's done since he entered the league in 2019. No one has more home runs. No one has more RBIs. This guy's a bona fide star, and he just needs to take care of his own business this year, and he's going to get paid handsomely, whether it's from the Mets or someone else. But especially if he has a big year this year with the Mets, Steve Cohen has already said it. He knows that he's not going to be able to let him go. So they're going to be giving him a king's ransom, most likely. I mean, I think he's going to wind up getting a contract around $300 million after this year across a number of years, whether it's 9 or 10 years. I mean, he's 29 years old at this point, but we've seen it in baseball where these guys in their late 20s get double-digit years in their long-term contracts. That's what they want. They want that security. So, again, I think Alonso just needs to go out and do what he's done. I mean, he had a big year last year power-wise, but he hit 217. He didn't have much protection in the lineup. And that's really going to be boiled down to whether Francisco Alvarez takes the next step and becomes that middle-of-the-order bat in the lineup with Pete Alonso for the long term. And I think that's what the Mets kind of have envisioned, and it is what they should kind of have that in the backs of their mind in the very least, because Alvarez was 21 years old last year and popped 25 home runs. I mean, you expect him to take the next step this year. He's a guy who's very dedicated to his craft and has improved defensively. He's improved offensively. He's learned how to speak English. He's just a really impressive kid. And I think him paired with Pete Alonso in the middle of the Mets order, I think could be a lethal combination.
Yeah, that brings me to the next question. I know, like, the Mets are smart. They're really smart right now. There are some teams and some owners that would just try to force something, and I actually think Steve Cohen did a great job last year trying to sign Verlander and Scherzer. I think that was a smart move. Their window closed a little bit, but they are resetting. But that being said, I mean, if those guys in the middle of the order do produce, can they be a sneaky team?
It's possible. I mean, the two factors I look at are you going to get a bounce back year from Jeff McNeil? Are you going to get a bounce back year from Starling Marte, who's looked great in winter ball? He's looked good in Grapefruit League play so far. He looks healthy. he looks like his speed and explosiveness are back, and that would be a huge factor for the Mets, as he was an all-star for them in 2022 and a main catalyst in their lineup. Even in the end of 2022, he broke his finger when he got hit by a pitch in Pittsburgh in the early September, and they lost him for the rest of the month, and it really hurt the Mets lineup the rest of the way. And I think that a healthy Marte and a Jeff McNeil, who's a batting title type, will be huge assets for the Mets this year in their offense improving, because they only added Harrison Bader. It's the same offense as last year plus Harrison Bader. So the Mets, I think, are counting on these guys to bounce back. They're also counting on another big year from Lindor, from Alonso, Brandon Nimmo. So if those guys are all performing up to their expectations, it should be a pretty good lineup like we saw for the majority of 2022. And that was a team that won 101 games. So I think that's where the optimism comes from, where the Mets feel like they could sneak into a wild card with the team that they put together.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like you just started naming names. I mean, when you start naming like they do have like five guys that can hit the baseball. So
Yep.
yeah, I mean, it was a down year for the Mets, but I think the Mets fans should still be optimistic about the year, because there are 7 teams that make the playoffs in each league. So it's not like they can't be sneaky good. And I mean, we see it with the Phillies every single year. Like they're not really a good regular season team, but they can all you have to do is get in the dance and things
Yep.
can happen.
Mhm.
Former Yankees, Luis Severino,
Mhm.
you have Harrison Bader now, you have Luke Voigt on the roster. How are the former Yankees looking in camp, and who are you most excited about?
I think Luis Severino is pretty exciting. I mean, it's been quite some time where he was the ace Cy Young candidate all-star that he was with the Yankees. I mean, that was back in 2018. And then really from there, he dealt with the injuries, underperformance. Last year, he struggled with fastball command. He thought he was tipping pitches, but also it just came out in the New York Post recently that he was also struggling with sleep. So in the end of last season, Eric Cressey, the performance coach for the Yankees, who also has his own facility in Florida, he recommended Luis Severino to go see a sleep specialist. And now he's ultra improved his sleep habits and schedule, to whereas he's not watching TV at night anymore. He's taking magnesium, which is a popular one. He's also he's listening to music at night and trying to go to bed early, and it's really improved his sleep. And he feels like it's going to help with his fatigue. So that could be something that could eliminate injuries and increase his performance on the mound this year. So Carlos Mendoza is excited about him. I mean, they spent a lot of time together in the Yankees organization, and Mendoza believes because of his competitiveness that he's going to be a guy who's going to bounce back this year as long as he's healthy. So that could be an intriguing one for the Mets this year. I know it's been a while, but he's only 30 years old, and he doesn't have that many innings the last several seasons because of the injuries. So it's possible that if the Mets are able to figure it out, and if this new sleep schedule has helped, we could see a big year out of him. And then obviously Harrison Bader is a guy who also could be potentially a productive player if he stays healthy. I mean, we saw him hit the ball a little bit with the Yankees when he was healthy, but the problem was last year he suffered several different injuries. He does not know why he suffered so many different injuries as opposed to just a re-aggravation. But really, when he came back from the IL in the beginning of last year after missing the first month with the Yankees, he was hitting the cover off the ball for a little while, and his defense is statistically the best defensive center fielder in all of baseball. So he's going to improve the Mets defense up the middle tremendously. They believe it's going to help them prevent runs. And if you can get a little bit of production out of his bat at the bottom of the order, I think that it'd be, a major bonus.
Yeah, no, I love Harrison Bader. It just didn't make sense for the Yankees, because the Yankees do need lefty bats. Speaking of lefty bats, I know Mets fans are already looking into the 2025 free agency class. And a lot of Mets fans are trolling Yankee fans already, saying that Juan Soto will be a Met in 2025. And I know we had a little back and forth on Twitter, obviously, very friendly. Are they going to be are they going to be going after Juan Soto? What are your thoughts on that? Is Stevie really going to be spending $700 million on the guy, or try to figure that out?
I mean, we just saw the Dodgers spend $1 billion on 2 players this past winter. So Steve Cohen has the wallet to do so. The Mets have a lot of money coming off the books. If they show something to Steve Cohen this year, is potentially making a wild card, and he feels that re-signing Pete Alonso and going out there and getting Juan Soto will put them over the edge for the next step to be serious, then I think that's maybe something they'll explore. I mean, there's going to be a lot of competition. Soto's probably going to get a $600 million contract, most likely. So if the money works out and it makes sense for the Mets, I think that they could be serious suitors.
No, I agree. I no matter what, like if I'm a Yankees fan, obviously, and I think the number right now that they're going to offer is 550,
Hmm.
and we'll see 10 years, 550 or whatever it is, $550 million is probably the number that they're going to start at, which is absolutely insane. But the guy is worth it. Like we've seen him in 2 spring training games, and you could see him like the ball slows down when he's watching the ball. It's honestly something crazy to watch. I don't know. We're just lucky this year. I mean, the Yankees have to get it done this year. Like if the Yankees win the AL East and they compete in the playoffs, I don't think Soto's going anywhere because he'll be comfortable. But like, there is a small possibility that he struggles a little bit and he hears the boos and he doesn't want to be part of the
Yep.
organization. But I do think this, and I will say it right now, there could be a little flip flop here if the Mets go out and say, "Hey, Soto, here's 700 million." And the Yankees are sitting there. They might go after Pete Alonso because Rizzo's on his last year, and if Rizzo doesn't perform, I'm sure the Yankees are going to look at Pete Alonso because I mean the Yankees are
Yep.
kind of in win now mode, and that 30-year old, I mean, he'd probably get $200 million from the Yankees. I don't know if the Mets are going to be able to do both Soto and Pete Alonso, and I do think realistically it makes more sense that Pete Alonso will be a Met in 2025. But this is something that we had to talk on because I mean, again, I don't there. I have no ill will towards the Mets, but the Mets fans do come in my mentions, and they hit me with the too bad he'll be a Met in 2025, and I just want to tell the Mets fans just keep it easy. Let's relax for a second. Let's get through the full season first. You never know; these Mets could be sneaky, and we could be singing a different tune in October. So I mean, and I hope that the Yankees and Mets are the last 2 teams standing. There's nothing wrong with these teams being good. I never want the Mets to fully win, but I want them to be good because I think it's good for the city, and I think that the cream rises to the top. So I'm excited about that as well. All right, we did that. Why aren't? Oh wait, I did ask that too. Is is it is it a smart move going young for once? They are just decided to kind of reset. I kind of asked this, but what are you expecting? Is like Vientos going to be up? What are they thinking with the young guys?
I think it makes sense to go with your young guys this year, see what you have. I believe that's the plan. Otherwise, they could have signed a Gio Urshela to play third base every day, but they don't want to do that because it wasn't a long time ago where Brett Beatty was the number 2 prospect in baseball or in the Mets organization, and he was a top 100 prospect in baseball. He had a struggling first full season last year in the big leagues, had to go back down to the minors, but they didn't want to bring in a veteran who has the potential to play every day because Beatty would be looking over his shoulder the whole time and it wouldn't help with his development. So we're going to find out a lot about Brett Beatty this season, especially in the early part. He's going to find out a lot about himself, how he's able to respond to adversity. So we're going to see Beatty have the start off with the everyday third base job, and we're going to see Alvarez behind the dish, and he earned that despite a struggling second half last year. Still had the 25 home runs, of course, and was impressive. But Mark Vientos as well probably will be the DH for the Mets, and we're going to see how that goes. I mean, I've already heard from certain talent evaluators around the league that Vientos would probably be better suited playing first base every day on another team and then building up his value there because he has 30 home run power that he showed off in the minor leagues. It's just, can he translate that to the big leagues? And is he going to be able to do so as a DH in an everyday role with the Mets? So they just don't know. That's why they signed guys like G-Man Choi, Luke Voigt. Like they have some options there. And if Mark Vientos falters, that they could put a veteran in there or potentially have a platoon such as a Trace Thompson, who's been tearing the cover off the ball and made some improvements this winter as well. So that's another option there. So the Mets are going to have some choices, and we'll see how long they give the leash to Beatty. We'll see how long Vientos' leash is, but these guys are going to play this year, and they're going to see what they have.
Yeah, it's a catch-22. I mean, yeah, even with the Yankees and Peraza, like he looked so bad in the majors, and like now his trade value has gone down. So you play the guys, they don't perform at the MLB level right away, their trade value hurts. Same thing you could say with Everson Pereira. So I mean, I think that the Mets are smart. They went all in last year. They're taking a step back this year. In 2025, they'll be ready to go again because those 2 big names will be off the books. And the Yankees are are struggling right now with the same kind of thing. Aaron Hicks still getting paid $10 million. Josh Donaldson still getting paid $6 million this year. So it's a little bit frustrating coming from a Yankee fan when you're sitting there saying, "Oh, we couldn't get the aforementioned Josh Hader because there were $16 million on the books from absolute total scrubs last year." And I think it's important. I think it's important for these young guys to play. Like we always say over at Yankees Pod, like hug your girl, not your prospects. But sometimes when you aren't, all pushing all the chips in the middle, it's nice. It's nice. Remember Gleyber Torres back in 2018 when the Yankees weren't even playing that well. He came up, and I mean, so I think it's no matter what, if you play the young guys, despite the fact that they might only win 80 games this year or whatever, I do think it will be an exciting year for the Mets because, I mean, you guys do have a rabid fan base and very knowledgeable fan base as well. So, yeah, I'm pretty excited. All right. If it were up to you, let's go. Let's fast forward. Let's fast forward a year. You're the GM of the Mets. Which players were you be looking at from a starting pitcher standpoint? That being Burns, Fried, Wheeler, or Bieber. Is there anything that you've heard or, that you would just do as a GM into the 2025 season?
As far as what I've heard, it's definitely a little bit getting ahead of ourselves at this point, minus the Soto rumors that we've heard, which you expect those because he's a superstar and he's ready to hit the market after this season. Beyond that, though, there are some good starting pitching options, and the Mets will have the opportunity to sign one of those guys because they have Kodai Senga, who they're hoping comes back from his injury and pitches similar to the form where we saw him nail the runner-up for Rookie of the Year last year. They're hoping he builds off that.
And he had a great contract. That's a great contract right there.
Yeah, absolutely. It is a great contract when you see what Yamamoto just signed for and what they offered him. So beyond that, they could pair Kodai Senga at the top of the rotation with a bona fide ace pitcher next offseason. And that's what fans were hoping for this year, but it just wasn't in the cards with the blueprint of the current team. And again, a lot of it's going to ride on how they do this year. Do they show improvements? Do they make the playoffs? And then I think that they'll have a better and more clear idea of what they're going to do next winter. And they will have options because of the plethora of starting pitching that's going to be available next winter. And they have all that money coming off the books. So there will be more flexibility.
Yeah, I mean, I think that everybody in baseball is going to be after Corbin Burns next year, and I don't like the fact that the Orioles got him because David Rubenstein is just a beast, and what he's doing with the Carlisle group, and now with the Orioles, I'm a little bit worried about the Orioles. I'm not going to lie; it's the craziest thing to say because you ask a Yankee fan about the Orioles 5 years ago, and you're just laughing and.
Yep.
These guys, Adley Rutschman, they got a lot of guys now, and it's not going to, that AL East is not going to be easy at all. And so I'm a little bit worried there. And that's a guy that if the Yankees do miss out on Juan Soto, that's the guy that's going to get $400 million. So I think that's a team, I think that Cohen's going to be looking after. I think Steinbrenner's going to be looking at him. I think Artie Moreno's going to be looking at him. That's a guy that I value very highly. And it's a shame that they didn't want to trade Spencer Jones for Corbin Burns because he'd be in pinstripes right now. But again, this is the Mets preview, not the Yankees preview. Of course, I came on the Mets preview with the Yankees.
The crossover, a little bit of a crossover,
but a little bit of. I mean,
team. So
yeah, people have been wondering why I just don't do a full Yankees podcast. Period. But that's why we started Yankees Pod. So we're doing that every day on the Twitter Spaces, which is actually a great time if you ever want to stop by. I'm sure the people they were excited that you were coming on. So. Shout out to everybody over there. Who is someone no one is talking about at camp?
No one is talking about, I mean, it's kind of hard to go under the radar in camp. I mean, there's just so many prospects the Mets have that people are excited about. Guys they're hoping to bounce back. The superstars who they have. I mean, there are guys maybe in the bullpen, such as a Jorge Lopez, who was an all-star for the Orioles 2 years ago as their closer. He had a really nightmare stint with the Twins after he was traded at the deadline that year. And then he had a rough year last year as well. But that's a guy who, if they can figure him out, he could potentially be the main setup man to Edwin Diaz, which the Mets don't have a clear-cut eighth inning guy right now, unless it's Adam Ottavino or Jake Diekman. So a Jorge Lopez bounce back this year would be huge for the Mets bullpen. And I guess he hasn't really been talked about at all to this point. And he had some success not too long ago. So he's only a year and a half removed from having some really dominant performances with the Orioles as their main closer before Felix Bautista took over after the trade. So Jorge Lopez is a guy who, yeah, maybe he could be a sneaky good signing for David Stearns, and he's kind of made a living off of that and during his time in Milwaukee.
Got it. Got it. Yeah. And that was another question I was going to ask was about Edwin Diaz. Is he looking healthy? How was his rehab stint? And all I think about when I hear the words Edwin Diaz is your guy, Frank the Tank, just screaming about him. So, I mean, we could talk probably 45 minutes on the World Baseball Classic, and I'm not going to get you there, but how is Edwin Diaz doing?
I spoke to Edwin Diaz last week at his locker, and he's in very, very good spirits. He's excited to be back. He's looking forward to being an all-star this year and being that dominant closer that he was back in 2022. I mean, he's the best closer in baseball, I believe, that's not named Josh Hader. So if he's healthy and can replicate anything close to what he did in 2022, the Mets are going to be in a good spot. I don't think he's a concern at all. He was ready in his rehab last year. If the Mets were a postseason team last year, he probably would have pitched at the end of the season. There was just no point in bringing him back last year with the team so far out of it. So Edwin Diaz probably will have another huge year this year as long as he stays healthy. And he's talking about how him and his brother are hoping to make the NL All-Star team together. He's really seems like he's just grateful to be back after missing an entire year. It was not easy for him to sit on the sidelines for that long, especially after having the huge year he did in 2022. So the Mets just really need to worry about getting him the ball in the ninth inning with a lead, which could be the challenge there with given the construction of the bullpen, the offense, whatever it may be, the starting rotation. I think Edwin Diaz is the least of their concerns going into this year.
No, I tend to agree. I had to ask about him. Well, maybe we'll see the Trumpets again this year. Obviously, they didn't play that well in 2022, but it's all jokes here. It's all jokes here. Yeah, I mean, that's really all I had for you. I did, it's probably crazy going on being, I know you do the Frank the Tank pod and that's more of a fun side, but you do really do an excellent job covering the Mets. So we thank you for coming on and anything you wanted to talk about, or is that really it that we're doing today?
Well, it's a long season. Mets and Yankees fans, buckle up. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint, as I've learned over the last couple of years. This is my fourth season already with the Mets and my second season with the Yankees. I don't know where the time went, but we're all going to have fun. There's going to be ups and downs. There's going to be hysterics. There's going to be happy times too. And just trying not to get too high, get too low, and just know that the most important games are played down the stretch of the season. And Mets and Yankees fans are hoping that they're going to be in it and making moves at the trade deadline and be ready for that stretch run. And that's really all that's important because we've seen certain teams start off hot in the beginning of the year and then they flame out by the summer. So again, long season. I'll be covering it all. If you want to check out my work at Ragazzo Report on Twitter and also on my websites Inside the Mets and Inside the Pinstripes. And that would be si.com/MLB/Mets and si.com/MLB/Yankees. So I appreciate all the support from everyone over the years. And yeah, it's exciting. Baseball season's just around the corner. So this is the best time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Final two questions. We'll get you out. Fill in the blank. The Mets will win blank games in 2024.
I think the Mets will win 80 games.
Okay. And fill in the blank. The New York Yankees will win blank games in 2024.
I think the Yankees will win 92 games and be a wild card team.
Okay. Pat, as always, thank you. We'll talk soon. Maybe during the Subway Series. Maybe we'll do another crossover. But yeah, really appreciate you coming on and taking time out of your busy day. So appreciate you as always. And yeah, go check out Pat, follow him, and I'll send the link out on Twitter, and we'll get that going. But I appreciate you, and we'll be looking forward to reading you all year long.
Of course, glad to do it, Jimmy. Thanks for having me on.